What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have more stuff to talk to you about today with this potential winter storm. We're noticing a track shifting further to the south, which for those in the northeast, we're not going to be seeing as much snow as what we were originally anticipating. However, if you are in the South, if you are in Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, those areas right there, you need to take this very, very seriously. For this video, I would pay less attention to the snowfall amounts, and I would pay more attention to the potential impacts that this storm could bring, and we will be going over all of it right here, right now. So let's go ahead and start with what the National Weather Service has been putting out. There are currently winter storm watches that have been issued for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, southeastern Oklahoma, much of Arkansas, and Louisiana near Shreveport. So we're going to go ahead and go over a lot of these areas right here. So here's what we have for the NWS in Dallas-Fort Worth right here. Winter storm watches in effect. Heavy snow and mixed precipitation possible. Total snow accumulations between 3 and 6 inches and ice accumulations around 1/10 of an inch possible. And this is for portions of north central and northeast Texas from late Wednesday night until Friday afternoon. Impacts. Roads, especially bridges and overpasses, will likely become slick and hazardous. Travel could become very difficult to impossible, especially in an area like Dallas-Fort Worth, where the Metroplex has over 6 million people that are going to potentially be affected by this. So we need to take this very, very seriously. Right here in Waxahachie, Fort Worth, Denton, Greenville, Sulphur Springs, those areas right there. 3 to 6 inches for a lot of people in the Midwest like myself may not seem like very much, and a lot of people are probably going at me in the comments going, Patrick, why are you talking about this snowstorm? Why are you talking about this in such a concerning level? It's only 3 to 6 inches of snow. 3 to 6 inches of snow may not seem like a lot for someone who lives in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio, but it is a lot for Texas. It is a lot for Louisiana. It is a lot for Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the rest of the South. It is a lot, and a lot of people down there do not know how to drive or how to kind of deal with this amount of snow, and that's why I'm talking about this right here. So yeah, the NWS in Tulsa issued a winter storm watch for these areas as well. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what we were calling for right here. Between 3 and 7 inches of snow with locally higher amounts possible across southeastern Oklahoma. Locally higher amounts, so that could mean 8, 9, potentially 10 inches of snow. It could mean anything in between. Fort Smith, there's also a winter storm watch in effect for there, between 3 and 7 inches possible over there. In Little Rock, we're looking at 4 to 7 inches. I actually looked at this earlier today. For a lot of these areas I have to reiterate this, for a lot of these areas, this is a lot of snow, and on top of that, you're looking at, especially for the southern parts of the winter storm watch area, you're looking at potentially freezing rain possible with this. So yeah, here's what we have going on in Shreveport. This is where the winter storm watch is right here. We're looking at snow accumulations between 2 and 6 inches and ice accumulations up to 1/2 an inch. Ice accumulations up to 1/2 an inch is pretty concerning, to say the very least. And this isn't just going to be impacting this area right here. There's going to be more watches issued. There's going to be some winter weather advisories issued for parts of Arkansas, especially in the Ozark Plateau as well. They're expected to get another 3 to 5 inches of snow, same with southern Illinois. The areas that got a lot of freezing rain and sleet from the previous snowstorm are going to get several inches of snow on top of that, which is going to only make things a lot worse because already you don't have much power. Some areas still don't have power restored. There's already still quite a bit of ice in the ground because it hasn't gotten above freezing over there, and there's still a huge high pressure system moving through that's going to keep temperatures well below freezing in those areas that have been impacted by the ice storm. Now you're getting more snow on top of that. That's just going to be a recipe for several problems, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to that as well. So that's what we have going on with the NWS. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the forecast runs that we've been paying attention to. We can use mainly medium and long range runs. The short range runs are not in the line of fire just yet, but we can see how this is going to eventually evolve. And I will warn you, some of these runs are a little bit I'm not particularly that fond of, because I think there's a little bit of a warm bias with them. I'm speaking about the NAM, by the way, and I'll show you what I'm talking about right here. So here's what we have with the NAM. The NAM has this low pressure system developing in the Gulf of Mexico, but it starts off generally as rain. Right here, and I want to go ahead and first, actually, while I'm looking at this, look at the temperature, see what they are in these areas compared to what we're seeing with other runs. The NAM is looking at 33, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. The GEM RDPS is looking at temperatures in the upper 20s. The GEM GDPS the same. The European is looking at temperatures in the lower 30s, which is more than enough for snow. GFS is a little bit wonky as well. It's been kind of going back and forth with its wonkiness right here. For example, the 0Z. Yeah, a lot of that freezing rain, which is pretty interesting right here. It stays north of Dallas-Fort Worth, actually, which would likely give it rain over there. So there is a little bit of a split in the models that I've been watching, but ultimately, from what I'm seeing and from what the National Weather Service is seeing, as this high pressure system continues to move through much of the United States, that shouldn't be too big of an issue right there. The highest I could see it going in like areas around Dallas-Fort Worth is like maybe like 32, like 31, 32, like right around the freezing line. I don't see anything happening below that, like especially at nighttime if this storm develops around there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the precip type right here. So this system's going to develop. It's going to start developing. Actually, this is at 6 o'clock at night, so this is around nighttime, which is pretty interesting, which isn't exactly optimal. But you have this low pressure system moving and developing in the Gulf of Mexico, and then bringing quite a bit of snowfall, according to the NAM, for much of Mississippi, much of Alabama, the northern areas of Georgia near Atlanta as well, the northern half of South Carolina, and even going into North Carolina as well. That is pretty concerning, to say the very least. Granted, I don't trust the initialization of this, mainly because I think the temperatures are a little too warm, and the NAM previously with the last snowstorm had a bit of like an inversion bias to it, so I'm taking it with a huge pinch of salt. So let's go ahead and show you the GEM RDPS right here. GEM RDPS showing generally freezing rain at first for much of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then bringing snow on the back end of it. But then it really spreads out, brings a lot of snow, and especially a lot of freezing rain to areas in Arkansas and Louisiana over here. A lot of the snow I am noticing, if you are in Dallas-Fort Worth, if you're in Shreveport, is going to be on the backside of this. And depending on how powerful that backside is, will depend on how much snow you get, but the GEM RDPS is pretty widespread. It has this system really rampaging through much of Arkansas, and then it enters the Ozark Plateau into the Midwest, brings an extra amount of snowfall for a lot of areas in St. Louis, which already got 9 inches of snow from the previous snowstorm, so you're going to get probably another 3 to 5 on top of that. Then this moves into Indiana, Ohio, where potential lake effect is going to be a problem from this system. Then you have this moving through Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, and those areas as well. GEM GDPS, this is the long range run, has it generally moving out to sea, but it brings a huge ice storm to North Carolina, South Carolina, and it brings a few more inches of snow to parts of the Delmarva Peninsula, as well as Virginia and even Maryland as well, so we're going to have to pay attention to it. Also watching an Alberta Clipper system that some of the long-range runs have been tracking with this system right here. That's your Alberta Clipper. Pressure on it's like 1,002 millibars. That's your classic Clipper. That's going to be entering the Midwest and potentially impacting the Chicago area, and then fizzling out as the low pressure system dissipates in the Midwest. So that's what we're looking at right there. That's the next kind of snowstorm that we're paying attention to, that Clipper system. So that's what we have going on right here from the runs. So that's that's kind of the track of it. Let's go ahead and show you some of the snow accumulations. I'm going to start with the NAM right here, although I will say the NAM's run isn't complete. It only goes 84 hours out, and the 18Z is just trickling in, so we won't be able to gauge that much. But based on what we're seeing so far, it doesn't give much of DFW much snow at all. It's mainly going to be rain over there. However, I don't know how reliable the NAM is, because it has been, especially in the last couple of snowstorms, had a bit of a warm bias, especially in the upper atmosphere, where it completely overestimated the inversion that it would take. Like, we were looking at a huge sleet storm for much of St. Louis from the NAM, for example, and it was going to bring like maybe 5 inches of snow at most. The snowfall amounts were almost double that, and the sleet was not nearly as much of a factor as what the NAM was suggesting. It was still pretty severe, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't nearly as powerful as what the NAM was forecasting. So I'm taking the NAM with a grain of salt. I'm taking all these runs with a grain of salt because a lot of these can happen. They're all within the realm of reality, but I would wait till tonight or tomorrow before the runs start zeroing in. Usually about 2 days out is when the model runs finally start zeroing in. And that's when I would give a judgment call on that. If we go ahead and show you the GEM RDPS, let's go ahead and zoom in real quick. The GEM RDPS wants up to 18 inches of snow for the northern parts of Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm going to be brutally honest here. As much as I'm sure a lot of people are going to be commenting, oh, this is great. We haven't seen this much snow in a long time, Patrick. The runs are doing miracles for us. And I got a comment last night saying that the local news could see up to 11 inches of snow. I'm going to be brutally honest here and say I don't think 18 inches of snow is realistic. I know, it's a hot take. Not really, but still. I don't trust this, especially for the northern runs. I'd have to take it with a huge pinch of salt right here. Personally, I think what we're going to see, I think 6+ inches is more realistic compared to like 18 inches, a foot of snow. I don't see a foot of snow happening at this current point unless the rest of the runs zero in. I think the GEM RDPS and the GEM GDPS, mind you, are pretty aggressive and that's not exactly a hot take for me to give. So that's what we have going on. Let's go ahead and show you the GEM GDPS. GEM GDPS brings more snow to Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, in the Ozark Plateau, by the way, where a lot of that ice happened. You're looking at potentially up to 6 inches of snow or more. If you're in St. Louis, you're looking at 3 to 5 inches. I called that. If you're in Tennessee, though, we got to talk about that. Because if you're in Tennessee, if you're in Mississippi, if you're in Alabama, right here, most of the state is going to see potentially up to 6 inches of snow in the lower elevations and up to a foot in the higher elevations in the Appalachian Mountains. That is pretty concerning. And I highlighted this at the beginning of the video. This is why. This right here is why. Tennessee does not usually see up to a foot of snow in the higher elevations even, or even 6 inches of snow in areas like Nashville, Memphis, those areas right there. This is a very atypical situation for the Upper South. Tennessee drivers, no offense, but you can't drive for shit in snow. I know, I just said a curse word on a video. I apologize for that, but you get the picture. You get the general point I am trying to make with this. Let's go ahead and show you the European run. European, a bit more conservative, but it's also pushing the storm a bit further to the south. Instead of maybe DFW getting the most snow in Texas, you're looking at areas in the northeastern part of Texas getting up to a foot of snow from this. Like the areas around Dallas-Fort Worth are looking at 6 to 8 inches of snow, unless you're in Denton County, according to this run. I think the European is a little bit too far to the south, and I think areas more. If you shifted the lineup by about 100 miles, that'd be a bit more realistic outcome. But even still, if the European does form out, you're looking at up to a foot of snow for parts of Arkansas, Shreveport getting 9 inches of snow, and areas in Mississippi getting over 6 inches of snow. That has not happened in quite a while, ladies and gentlemen, and that would be really reflective of how that freezing line really sets up across much of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. The Euro wants Atlanta to get 4 inches of snow. Less than an inch of snow in the Atlanta metro area shuts everything down. Less than an inch of snow in Birmingham shuts everything down. Less than an inch of snow in these kinds of areas, you can't drive in them. A lot of people in the South don't know how to drive in this. And that's kind of the reality that we have. Tennessee's a bit more conservative, 3 to 5 inches of snow. I could see 6+ inches of snow happening in Tennessee at the general track of this. If we go ahead and show you the GFS, it's also a bit more conservative, but it also pushes more snowfall for parts of the mountainous regions, and it still puts a lot of the Upper South in the line of fire. So this is right here, these runs are why I say do not look at the snow totals. look at the impacts, because this storm is not going to be so much for record-breaking snowfall accumulation, but rather the impacts it's going to bring. This is going to be a very impactful storm. I cannot stress this enough. I know I keep repeating myself about this at times, but it's a very important point that I need to keep bringing up for you guys. So that's what we have going on here with the snow totals. One last thing I want to check is how this how it's going to end up afterward in terms of what we're looking at with with temperatures and all that stuff. I want to see where that snow line, like where that freezing line is, and if the heights are going to support it. Generally, if we're taking a look, if we take a look at the thickness of it, I've been watching it pretty closely. At least in parts of Dallas-Fort Worth, it is a little iffy. But but right now it's leaning towards snow, more likely of snow instead of rain, and that's why the NWS pulled the trigger on the winter storm warning. And if you go ahead and take a look at a lot of these areas, and maybe you're seeing a huge blast of cold air that's going to be moving through in the next couple of days after that. You're looking at, for example, in parts of the upper south right here, temperatures cracking, getting into the teens in the evening, in the night. That snow is not going anywhere, and you're looking at areas in Georgia and Alabama getting into the teens, into the lower 20s. That snow is going to stay there. Now, granted, in areas around Atlanta and Tennessee, some of it's going to melt, but there's also that possibility of it refreezing into ice over the next couple of weeks, and that's going to make travel even worse for a lot of those areas. And then you have another Arctic cold front that's going to be moving through much of the U.S., and it's going to be bringing more freezing temperatures, or already pretty freezing, but even colder temperatures for much of the Midwest into mid next week. So we're going to have to pay attention to it. It does warm up a little bit. You have a ridge set up building in, and then you have another cold blast that's going to be moving through, although it won't be as severe as what we're seeing. But overall, a very active pattern for snow, and very active pattern for winter compared to what we were seeing previously. But by and large, what you have going on is for the month of January, and this is my opinion right here, you're still going to see that active pattern, especially for the next couple of weeks. Yes, things might tone down for a few days before another snowstorm happens, but generally you're looking at just looking at Fantasyland for a second. You're looking at a snowstorm on the 18th in the GFS, and then another system a few days afterward that could impact Texas, and then another system starting to organize and develop as it's moving out of the Pacific Northwest. So ultimately, what I will tell you is, compared to what we saw last winter, this does look like it's going to be a much more active pattern, and the weak La Nina that we are seeing is definitely helping with that. If you are in areas in the Midwest, if you're in areas in the upper South, if you're in areas in those areas, you're generally going to see more snow than average. But ultimately, the situation at hand is still evolving. We have a lot of things that we need to take with a pinch of salt. I'm going to continue to update you here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, but ultimately, that's the main stuff that we have going on for you right here. Much more active than it was. I get it. Been getting some comments, and I had some people behind the scenes asking me questions about, are we looking at a more active pattern, or this winter are we going to see more snow? Generally, on average, you are with this pattern, and I can go ahead and show you this real quickly, with at least at the 100 millibar heights. Trough, 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 trough. You don't see a lot of ridging. You see one ridge that develops throughout this entire pattern that stays there for like a day or so, and then it moves out and becomes and it's replaced by a trough. If you see trough patterns like this, that tells you it's going to be much more active weather, because generally with a ridge you see more subsidence, you don't see as much weather and like extreme weather and all that stuff, and it's generally warmer as well. But if you see a lot of these troughs right here, watch out, because there's some pretty interesting weather that's going to be heading your way. And that's the general gist of what we are seeing right here for the next couple of weeks, because I've been getting some questions about that. I figured I'd address that real quickly. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and close the video out right here. One last reminder, do not worry about the snow accumulations. At this point, it's not a matter of, is it going to be 6 inches? Is it going to be 12? What the whole problem that I have with it is, there's going to be a lot of impacts either way because of where it's going in Texas, Tennessee, and much of the upper South. We're closing the video out. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out and it helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come hang out with us at the Storms United Discord server, be sure to join it. We have the link in the end screen that will be shown in a second. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to support the channel more directly, be sure to join my Patreon. Link in the description down below. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.